Game, set,
that's a
match.
very...
The National Bank Open winner fell to Barbara Krejcikova 6-3, 6-2 in the opening round. Mboko's strong play this year saw her soar from outside the top 300 in rankings to 23rd, and she was seeded 22nd at Flushing Meadows. Meantime, fellow Canadian Gabriel Diallo is also in action today at Flushing Meadows. The 31st seed from Montreal takes on Damir Zumher of Bosnia. It's the first time he's been seeded at a major tournament. Last year, he reached the third round of the U.S. Open. And for more on this tournament, we're joined live now by TSN's Mark Rowe. Mark, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's begin with Burlington's Victoria Mboko. What happened?
Well, often in one of these cases, Lena, it's not just one thing, but the two things that I would point to for Mboko was the wrist injury that she suffered in the semifinals during that National Bank Open run. We weren't quite sure how healthy and how much she'd recovered from that, and maybe throughout practice she felt really good, and then you get into a match and it's a whole different ball game, and clearly that was a factor. How much it was a factor, we can't sit here and say whether or not it was a major one or just a minor one. But then there's also the opponent that she faced, and she's a seeded player, and that gives you an advantage in that you don't have to face a seeded player for the first two rounds. Barbara Krejcikova normally would be a seeded player. Her ranking has gone down because of injuries, and she hasn't been able to play consistently. This is someone who's won 2 Grand Slams before. She won Wimbledon last summer, and she's a veteran on tour. So that's a really tough first-round opponent for Mboko. So those are 2 things you can clearly point to. The other things that you might wonder is nerves and the added expectations after winning in Montreal. Was that a factor? It was the first time that she's ever been in the main draw at the U.S. Open. So all that combined, it really spelled out for a difficult day for Mboko, but one that I'm sure she's going to look back at and learn from. And this is not the last time that we see Victoria Mboko at a major, and certainly not at the U.S. Open. Yeah,
I think we have to remember how young she is and how bright her future remains. All right, I'm watching the clock. Coming up at 3 o'clock, Gabriel Diallo is also in action. This is the first time he's been seeded at a major tournament.
Yeah, he's another one of the great stories in Canadian tennis. In fact, this is the first time that 5 Canadians have been seeded. So Diallo is in there as the number 31 seed. Some more expectations in comparison to last year when he made his debut at the U.S. Open and reached the third round. He is favored to win today against Damir Zumher. He has been playing really well this season. He won his first tournament during the grass court season. Looked really good at Wimbledon. Had a pretty competitive match against Jannik Sinner, who's the world #1, and not many players are having competitive matches with him. So that's something a positive to take from in Cincinnati for Diallo. But he is someone who is still growing in his game, and someone whose expectations year after year are getting bigger and bigger, and something that Canadian tennis fans are very excited about.
Okay, I've got some other Canadians on my list here, and I know you're watching how they're doing very closely as well. Denis Shapovalov, Felix Auger-Aliassime, they're going to play their opening matches tomorrow, and then Leylah Annie Fernandez as well.
Yeah, so Leylah Annie Fernandez won yesterday over Rebecca Marino. So we do have one Canadian, at least, who's reached the second round. We knew a Canadian was going to win that match because there was 2 Canadians going head-to-head. So the 2021 finalist is off to the second round. Tomorrow we'll see Felix and Denis. Denis will face Martin Fucsovics, who just won a tournament last week. So he's playing what we call a very informed player. For Felix Auger-Aliassime, he's taken on someone who's a lucky loser, who lost in qualifying, but because of injuries and other circumstances was able to get into the main draw. So Auger-Aliassime will come in as the big favorite for that match as he tries to get really his Grand Slam season back on track. We haven't seen the same success at those majors for Auger-Aliassime as we've seen in the past, and hopefully he can get back on track in New York.
All right, TSN's Mark Rowe, thanks so much for chatting with us. Always appreciate your insights. Take care.
My pleasure.